Hello everybody. As promised, I'm here to shoot a video today on making black walnut dye. It's very simple. Some would say this is actually not a dye but a stain, so you could say this is making black walnut stain. So it's pretty simple. You don't need super exact measurements. I've made way smaller batches, I've made way bigger batches, and I probably have way more walnuts than I need for this batch. But go and pick walnuts. I prefer to get them green, but as you can see, there's a lot of brown ones in the mix. It's not super necessary. And have all your dyeing material nearby. For normal dyeing, you want to make sure all your stuff is super duper clean. You know, you don't want any human sweat. The oils from your hands, anything, will mess up the dyeing process. But for this stuff, it doesn't really matter. Also, you probably will get the best success out of working with 100% cotton. But I can say for sure I have dyed synthetics with this stuff. It is incredibly potent. So right now, I haven't started the process all that much really. All I've got are black walnuts thrown in a trash can full of water. The water is already, I don't know how well this will pick up on camera, already starting to take on some color. I've got an old white bandana here. So you can kind of see just barely that even just soaking in the cold water, I don't know how much that's really going to pick up, but a little bit, like a really weak tea is the color that I'm getting just from sitting in here for 5 or 10 minutes. So we're gonna do a couple things to speed up the process, and mostly I'm gonna yak at you a whole bunch. So you know, hopefully you like hanging out with me. Enjoy the video, and if I can figure out how, I'm very tech illiterate, but if I can figure out how, I might do timestamps at some point to kind of give you an idea of when you can skip to. Now my usual behavior is I cut them 4 ways. You can do it in however way you like, but I just find that I can tear the flesh off easier if I cut 4 ways, because the actual flesh is what we're after. This actual interior nut, you know, the actual black walnut, is not going to contain the dye. So I'm just going to get what flesh I can off, throw it back in. So that's the first step. We got a lot of these, so I'll yak at you about the process for a bit, just chit-chatting while I work. So the process itself is pretty simple. All we're going to do is boil a bunch of these black walnut hulls. If you want to be lazy and you're not planning to use the nuts for anything, you can totally just boil the whole things and keep it simple. But as you can probably see, the green hulls tend to float. So by doing it this way, you can get a lot more dye in a lot less space, and it'll get hotter faster, because once they're cut off, the actual nut, they sink. So this process will allow you to get a lot more dye a lot more quickly, but it's not necessary. You can do things in a lot lazier ways and still get progress. A lot of these you can already kind of see as I cut into them. They're pretty pale in color, and they quickly react with the air. Of course, this is going to dye the heck out of your fingers. So if you're worried about that, wear gloves. The dye is harmless unless you were to like drink it or something, but on your skin, it actually has some benefits. It can clean up wounds. It can take care of some fungal problems. So it won't harm your skin, but it will leave it all miscolored. So be aware of that. So as soon as that popped off, you see it was very, very pale. Let's see if I can zoom in on it. You can quickly, rapidly see it is oxidizing darker and darker. That's normal. That's just from the compounds being exposed to air. You don't have to worry about like getting it back under the water and preventing that process. That process is just a part of the process. So yeah, you want a knife that you don't care all too much about. It's not terribly hard on the knife, but you are going to be prying and pulling and scraping a lot, so it'll tear up your blade a little bit. Nothing too bad, nothing you can't sharpen out, but you know, you might not want to do this with a super nice couple $100 knife if you're a nice guy, you might want to do like I'm doing and pull out a middle of the road or a lower price knife. But yeah, you can keep these in here to boil, like I said, but I'm just going to set them off to the side. As far as curing them, all these nuts that I'm throwing off the side are not ripe, so to speak. They're not cured. So what you want to do for them is you basically want to just leave them somewhere cool, dry, and with good ventilation. Mesh bags work well. Cardboard boxes with the tops open work okay. But you want to give them very, very good insulation. Not insulation, very good aeration, because you don't want them to get moldy. But basically you just want them to dry out, and that drying process is also going to mature the nut meats inside to make sure that they're good, tasty, and healthy for us. Also, I've never cracked one open green, but I'm told that they're very, trying to think of a good word, maybe fumy. Sort of like smelling or tasting the inside of a dry erase marker. They're very chemically and very rough, very hot to the face, to the nose, when they're unaged. Though they don't need to age as long as butternuts or white walnuts. White walnuts are another American native walnut, and they, I'm told, generally aren't really good to eat until well into winter. I've never seen one. There's a blight that makes it hard for them to live. It's not as dangerous as the chestnut blight to my knowledge, but it's still pretty severe. So I've never actually been around white walnuts, but they are native to my area. And I do have a hybrid variety of them with some genetics from Japanese walnuts. And those should be able to survive. I'll shoot a video on them maybe next year when they flower or when they fruit. They haven't fruited this year, but they did flower. But yeah, this is the process right here. Just cutting and pulling off all these holes. They're pretty firm, but they're not too bad. They're certainly not cutting through wood, but they're not easy either. It's not like cutting through an apple or something that's firm but easy to cut. These have quite a bit of resistance, but yeah. See how far along I am in time-wise for you guys. Oh yeah, we're already 7 minutes in. I'll stop at 10 and make a second video, a part 2 for the next steps, but as you can already see, my very pale skin is starting to become dyed. I'm not worried about it. Some people really freak out about it. When I was little, all the adults were like, oh, don't touch those, your hands will get dyed, you'll be covered in dye for weeks. They weren't wrong, but you know, it was always like a big deal when I was little. I saw adults always make a really big deal about it, but to me, as an adult myself now, as long as my son knows that he's gonna get covered in dye and he's okay with it, because he's still little, as long as he's not gonna get spooked by it because he knows it's coming, I don't have a problem with him picking him up or playing with him. It's what kids do. They like to explore and learn from the world around them, and I don't want to hinder that when it's not something dangerous. You know, these things aren't dangerous unless you're trying to eat it, which I don't think anyone who could smell what I'm smelling right here would try to eat it. They have this chemically smell. Granted, I like the chemically smell. It smells like a nice clean smell to me, but I wouldn't want to consume this smell. So, you know, if smell-o-vision existed, I would love to share what I'm smelling with you guys. But yeah, bit by bit, we're going to keep working at them. Some of them that are more broken down that I normally wouldn't have even picked up, those I can just rip apart by hand. But something I am going to do once I shut off the camera is light a little bitty fire next to this whole thing and just start letting it warm up, and I'll just keep cutting it while the fire burns. This much water to a small fire will take ages to heat up, So I can still work on this process while the fire burns. But yeah, you will want to heat this stuff up. It makes it extract the dye faster. It makes it do its job faster. So that'll probably be something I cover better in the next part. But yeah, of course, like anything, the smaller you break it up, the more dye you can extract them more quickly. But it's not that big a deal in my opinion. You can leave stuff in this dye hot or cold. You can throw stuff in this dye and leave it overnight. You can leave it for a few days. I made a batch about 2 years ago. I didn't make one last year because it wasn't a mast year, I don't think. For those of you who don't know, walnuts produce on mast years, or they have mast years. There are years where they produce a ton, and there are years where they don't produce hardly anything. I think last year in my area was a year they didn't really produce much of anything. So I didn't have anything to make dye with last year. But the year before I tried, dyed a whole bunch of stuff, dyed all of my smithing shirts that I've been wearing for years and they're starting to wear out, so I'm going to dye some more of those. I dyed some modern day military camo, the ACU or UCP. The thing about that camo to me personally, is I'm of the age range that if I had been enlisted, I would be wearing that camouflage. So I really don't feel comfortable or like to wear that camouflage anywhere, because I'm not trying to claim that I'm something I'm not. I'm not trying to pretend I was a veteran. So taking that camouflage, because it's very cheap, the military's finally moving to a different camouflage, and the gear is everywhere, and nobody really likes the camouflage no matter where. So this camouflage is in huge number and is unwanted by the average person, which means it's very cheap. You can get really good cheap gear, good pairs of pants, good shirts, whatever, for really cheap. But then, you know, like I said, I don't want to wear that in public and come off like I'm pretending to be military. So I take it and I throw it in this dye bath, and you still get the camouflage if you are into that, but it no longer is the exact United States, Army camouflage that it started as, the Universal Army camouflage. So, just something to think on. You can brown up your camouflage gear and things like that, color things whatever color you gotta. So, yeah, just some ideas on what you can do with this stuff, but here we go. I haven't even got this hot yet, so I wouldn't even really call this dye, but there it is. We just by soaking, this is no longer perfect white anymore, and it will get very, very dark once I actually get it hot and start extracting stuff. So I'll see you all in part 2. See you in a little bit.